The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was busy as always. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in their special seats. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal that caught the light. A few seemed to float in the air like ghosts. And then there were the humans. Minho sat in the human section near the back. He wore a simple dark suit that looked plain next to the fancy clothes of other ambassadors. His black hair was neat, and his face showed no emotion as he listened to the meeting. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 12 years now. At the front of the hall, Chancellor Veltar from the Zephyrian Empire was speaking. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin people but with blue skin and silver eyes. Veltar's voice was loud and proud as he talked about the new laws. The Council has decided, Veltar said, his silver eyes looking around the room. All military actions will now be controlled by the main species only. The helper species will take orders and follow them. Helper species. That was what they called humans now. Not partners. Not equals. Helpers. Minho's hands did not move on his desk. His face stayed calm, but inside something cold settled in his chest. In the medical wing of the station, Dr. Yuna was working on a patient. The sick being was from a world far away and the local doctors had given up hope. But Yuna had seen this sickness before. Her hands moved quickly as she prepared the medicine that would save the patient's life. Doctor, said her assistant, a crystal being named Thessara, who sparkled when she moved. Why do you work so hard for these cases? They are not important people. Yuna looked up from her work. Her dark eyes were tired but kind. Every life is important, she said in simple words. Thessara made a sound like breaking glass, which was how her people laughed. You humans are so strange. You care about everything. Yuna went back to her work. She did not answer, but her hands moved a little slower now. Far below the station, in the engine rooms that kept everything running, Hana was checking the power systems. She had built most of these machines herself over the past 10 years. The other engineers thought the work was boring, so they let the humans do it. Hana liked the quiet of the engine rooms. The machines hummed in a way that sounded almost like music to her. She knew every pipe, every wire, every small part that kept the great station alive. Her fingers moved over the controls like she was playing a piano. Human Hana, called a voice behind her. She turned to see Kortvan, a Zephyrian engineer who thought he was very smart. The Council wants you to train more of us to do this work. They say humans might not always be here to do these simple jobs. Simple jobs. Hana looked at the wall of controls around her. Each one connected to systems that other engineers had tried and failed to understand. But she just nodded. Of course, she said. Out in space, Captain Taiho was leading a patrol near the border. His ship was not the biggest or the strongest in the fleet, but somehow the dangerous areas always became peaceful when he arrived. Other captains said he was lucky. Taiho knew it was not luck. His crew was mixed. Humans, Zephyrians, crystalline beings, and others all worked together on his ship. They trusted each other because Taiho had taught them how. It had taken years to build this trust. Captain, said his second officer, a young human woman named Somin. We're getting reports of fighting near the outer ring. Should we go help? Taiho looked at the star map. The outer ring was controlled by beings who did not like the Council very much. When fights started there, they usually got worse fast. Set course, he said, but quietly. We don't want to make things worse. As his ship moved toward the trouble, Taiho thought about the morning's message from the Council. New rules, new limits on what human captains could do. Soon they would only be allowed to follow orders, not make decisions. Back in the Great Hall, the meeting was ending. Veltar had finished talking about the new laws. Lord Kethmos, who led the ethereal dominion and looked like a tall shadow with glowing eyes, was now speaking. These changes will make the Council stronger, Kethmos said in a voice like wind through caves. The helper species have done good work, but real decisions must be made by real leaders. A few beings clapped. Others made sounds that might have been agreement. The humans in their section stayed quiet. Minho slowly closed the folder on his desk. Inside were reports from humans all over Council space. Doctors saving lives that others could not save. Engineers keeping systems running that others did not understand. Captains stopping wars before they could start. Teachers helping young beings from different worlds learn to work together. All of it called helper work now. Minho stood up. His chair made a small sound as it moved back. A few beings near him looked over, but most were still listening to Lord Kethmos talk about the bright future of the council. Without saying a word, Minho walked to the door. His footsteps were soft on the metal floor. No one tried to stop him. No one asked where he was going. To them, he was just a helper leaving early. Outside the hall, Minho pulled out his communication device. He sent the same short message to every human in council space. Time to go home, that was all. No long explanations, no angry words about unfair treatment, just 4 simple words. Dr. Yuna got the message while washing her hands after surgery. She looked at it for a long moment, then began packing her medical supplies. Hana received it while deep in the engine rooms. She saved her work, backed up all the files, and started the long walk to her quarters. Captain Taiho read it while his ship was still flying toward the trouble in the outer ring. He thought for a moment, then changed course toward Earth. All across council space, humans began to pack. They did not argue with their bosses. They did not demand meetings or explanations. They simply finished their work, said polite goodbyes, and left. By the next morning, the great station felt different, quieter somehow. The humans were gone, but most beings did not notice yet. After all, they were just helpers. It would take time for the council to understand what they had lost. 3 days had passed since the humans left. Most beings on the great station did not even notice they were gone. The morning meeting still happened. The food hall still served meals. The ships still came and went from the docking bays, but small things were starting to go wrong. Kortvan stood in the engine room where Hana used to work. The human woman had left everything very neat and clean. All the controls were labeled. All the files were saved in the computer. It should have been easy to take over her job, but the main power grid was acting strange. The lights in Section 7 kept getting dimmer and brighter. The air systems were making new sounds, and the computer kept showing error messages that Kortvan had never seen before. This should be simple, Kortvan said to himself. He was a smart engineer. He had studied at the best schools on his homeworld. But every time he tried to fix one problem, 2 more problems appeared. He called his friend Nexivore to help. Together they looked at the control panels that Hana had used every day. Look, said Nexivore, pointing at a screen full of numbers. The power flow is not balanced. But according to our books, this should not be possible. Kortvan pulled up the files that Hana had left behind. Everything looked correct. The systems were built exactly like the plans said they should be. But somehow they were not working the same way. Maybe the human made a mistake, said Kortvan. But even as he said it, he knew it was not true. Hana never made mistakes. In the medical center, Dr. Nalarim was having her own problems. She had taken over for Dr. Yuna with great pride. The human doctor's methods were too soft, she had always said. Too much time spent talking to patients. Too much worry about small details. Nalarim believed in quick, strong medicine. Fix the problem fast and move on to the next patient. But things were not going well. 3 patients had gotten worse instead of better. The medicine that always worked on her homeworld was not working here, and the human medical files were confusing. Why did she use so many different treatments for the same sickness? Nalarim asked her assistant. The assistant, a young Zephyrian named Dalkon, looked through Dr. Yuna's notes. She wrote that each patient is different. Same sickness, but different bodies need different medicine. Nalarim made an angry sound. Nonsense. Medicine is science. Science has rules. One sickness, one cure. But even as she said it, she was looking at a patient who was not getting better. The standard cure should have worked by now. In Dr. Yuna's notes, there was a warning about this exact situation and what to do about it. But Nalarim did not want to follow human methods. Far from the station, Captain Taiho's replacement was learning hard lessons. Admiral Rixoth of the Crystalline Collective was a war hero. She had won many battles and was famous for her smart tactics. But the outer ring was different from a battlefield. Here the goal was not to win fights, but to stop them from starting. Report, Admiral Rixoth said to her bridge crew. Her crystal body caught the light from the ship's controls, making rainbow patterns on the walls. 2 mining ships are arguing over the same asteroid, reported her officer. Both sides have called for help. More ships are coming. This was exactly the kind of problem that Captain Taiho used to handle. He would fly between the 2 groups, talk to both sides, and find a solution that made everyone happy. It usually took him less than an hour. Admiral Rixoth had a different plan. Prepare weapons. We will show them who is in charge here. Her officer looked worried. Admiral, that might make things worse. These miners do not like to be told what to do. Then they will learn, said Admiral Rixoth. 2 hours later, the small argument between two mining ships had become a battle involving 12 ships. The miners were angry about the council trying to control them. Other groups were taking sides, and Admiral Rixoth was calling for more battleships to restore order. On another part of the border, war leader Hesivan of the Ethereal Dominion was having similar problems. The Ethereals were used to dealing with their own people, who followed orders without question. But the mixed populations near the borders were different. A trade dispute had turned into shooting. Families were running away from their homes, and Hesivan's attempts to restore peace were only making people more angry. Back on the main station, the communication problems were getting worse. Jiwan had been in charge of making sure all the different species could understand each other. It seemed like a simple job. The computer did most of the work, but the computer was making mistakes now. Yesterday, a Zephyrian trade offer had been translated as an insult to the Crystalline Collective. This morning, an ethereal peace proposal had been changed into what sounded like a threat. The new communication chief, a proud ethereal named Kesitana, could not understand why this was happening. The translation programs are the same, she told her staff. Nothing has changed, but something had changed. Jiwan had spent years fine-tuning the programs. She had learned that each species had special ways of speaking that the computer did not understand. Small changes in tone could mean big differences in meaning. Cultural jokes could become serious insults if translated wrong. Jiwan had created a whole system of notes and corrections that helped the computer do better. But she had never written down all the rules. They were just things she knew from working with different species for so long. Now those notes were gone with her. And every day the computer made more mistakes that pushed the different species further apart. In the trade centers, things were falling apart even faster. The complex system that moved goods between thousands of worlds had always seemed to run itself. Ships came in, goods were sorted, and everything went where it needed to go. But now ships were arriving at the wrong docks. Goods meant for ice worlds were being sent to desert planets. Food was sitting in storage too long and going bad, and no one could figure out why. The truth was that humans like Jiwan had been the invisible guides of the whole system. They had memorized which species needed what, when they needed it, and how to get it there. They had made thousands of small decisions every day that kept everything flowing smoothly. Without them, the system was like a river without banks. It flowed, but in all the wrong directions. Chancellor Veltar was getting reports about all these problems, but he was not worried yet. Small issues always happened when there were changes. His people would learn to handle things without the humans. "Send me a report in 1 week," he told his assistant. "I want to see how much more efficient we are without all that human paperwork." His assistant, a young Zephyrian named Mordak, looked nervous. "Sir, maybe we should ask some of the humans to come back and help train our people." Veltar's silver eyes grew cold. "We do not need help from helper species. We are the leaders of this council. We will find our own solutions." But deep in the station's computer systems, warning lights were starting to flash. Systems that had run perfectly for years were showing stress signs. The careful balance that had kept everything working was breaking down, and in space around the station, the first merchant ship had just gotten lost. Its navigation system had failed, and without human controllers to guide it home, the ship was drifting toward an asteroid field. The ship's captain sent out a distress call, but the communication system translated it as a request for directions to the nearest restaurant. No help was coming. The cracks were small now, but they were spreading. And soon, the beings who had called humans helpers would learn what it meant to try to run a galaxy without them. 2 months after the humans left, the problems were no longer small. Kortvin stood in the main control room, sweat running down his blue face. Around him, alarms were beeping. Red lights flashed on every wall. The great space elevator that connected the station to the planet below had stopped working completely. "What happened?" shouted his supervisor, Chief Engineer Naltes, as she rushed into the room. "I don't know," Kortvin said, his voice shaking. "Everything was working fine this morning. Then all the systems just stopped." The space elevator was not just a way to move between the planet and the station. It was the heart of everything. Power flowed through it. Communication signals traveled along it. The defense systems used it to coordinate their actions. Without it, the entire station was like a body without a spine. Chief Engineer Naltes looked at the control panels that Kortfin had been trying to understand for 2 months. The human engineer Hana had made it look so easy. She would walk along these same panels, touching controls here and there, and everything would work perfectly. "Did you check the power couplings?" Naltes asked. "Yes, they're fine. The gravity generators? Working normally. The quantum field stabilizers?" Kortfin paused. "The what?" Naltes felt her stomach drop. "The quantum field stabilizers. They should be in Section C of the manual." They both looked through the technical manuals. There was no Section C. There was no mention of quantum field stabilizers anywhere in the official plans. But deep in Hana's personal notes, buried in files that had taken weeks to decode, they found a single line. "Remember to check quantum field balance every 3rd day. Small changes can cause cascade failure." The space elevator was not built the way the official plans said it was built. Hana had made changes, improvements. The official design would never have worked as well as it did. But she had never told anyone about these changes, and she had never written them down in the official records. Now the elevator was dead, and no one knew how to fix it. On the planet below, millions of beings were trapped. The elevator was the only way to reach the space station. Ships could dock with the station, but the planet's atmosphere was too dangerous for most species to fly through. In the medical center, Dr. Nalarim was facing her worst nightmare. A plague had started in the outer colonies. It was not a new disease, but an old one that Dr. Yuna had kept under control for years. The first ship of sick beings had arrived that morning. Dr. Nalarim had treated them with the standard medicine. But instead of getting better, they had gotten much worse. "Why isn't the medicine working?" she asked Dalcon, her assistant. Dalcon was looking through Dr. Yuna's old files. "She has notes here about this disease. She says the standard medicine makes it worse." "That's impossible," Dr. Nalarim said. "This medicine has been used for 100 years. But look," Dalcon pointed at the screen. "She wrote that this disease changes when it spreads to different species. It learns to fight the medicine. She created a new treatment that worked better." Dr. Nalarim read the notes. Dr. Yuna had not just treated the disease. She had studied it. She had watched how it spread and changed. She had created 12 different versions of the medicine for 12 different situations. And now the disease was spreading through the outer colonies like fire. Ships full of sick beings were coming to the station every day, and Dr. Nalarim only knew how to use the old medicine that made everything worse. In space, the military situation was falling apart completely. Admiral Rixoth was fighting 3 different battles at the same time. What had started as small arguments between mining ships had grown into something much bigger. The problem was that she could not talk to war leader Hesivan, who was supposed to be helping her. Their ships used different communication systems. Their battle plans did not match, and every time they tried to work together, they got in each other's way. Captain Taiho had somehow made all the different military forces work as one team. His ships, crystalline ships, ethereal ships, and others had moved together like parts of the same machine. But Admiral Rixoth and war leader Hesivan could not even agree on which way was up. "Your ships are in our attack pattern." Admiral Rixoth sent a message to war leader Hesivan. "Your attack pattern is wrong," he sent back. "Move your ships to support our advance." While they argued, the rebels in the outer ring were growing stronger. They had started working together against the Council forces. News of the elevator failure had reached them, and they knew the Council was weak now. More ships joined the rebellion every day. Pirates who had been hiding in the dark started attacking trade routes, and species that had been afraid of the Council's power began to think about leaving the Council completely. Back on the station, the communication problems had become a disaster. Kestana, the new communication chief, was getting reports that made no sense. A trade agreement between the Zephyrians and the Crystalline Collective had been translated to say that both species were declaring war on each other. A peace treaty had been changed to sound like a list of insults. And a simple request for food supplies had become a demand for military surrender. How did this happen? Kesatana asked her staff. No one had an answer. The translation computers were working exactly as they were designed to work. But somehow they were getting everything wrong. The truth was that Jiwan had not just run the translation programs. She had understood that different species thought about things in different ways. When a crystalline being said, "We will consider your proposal," they meant yes, but we need time to make it official. When an ethereal said the same words, they meant probably not. But we don't want to hurt your feelings. Jiwan had spent years learning these hidden meanings. She had created a whole system of cultural notes that helped the computers understand not just the words, but what the words really meant. Without her knowledge, every conversation between species was becoming a misunderstanding, and misunderstandings were turning into anger. Anger was turning into hatred, and hatred was turning into war. On Earth, Do-hyun sat in his office reading the reports that came from his friends who had stayed to watch what happened. He had been one of the chief engineers, and he had helped design many of the systems that were now failing. He was not happy about the suffering, but he was not surprised either. "Did you know this would happen?" asked Yoonji, who had commanded Earth's defense networks before they left. "I hoped it wouldn't," Do-hyun said. "But yes, I knew it could. The space elevator." Hana made 47 changes to the original design. Small changes that made it work much better, but she never put them in the official records because she was afraid other engineers would undo them. The medical systems? Dr. Yuna had prevented 12 major disease outbreaks in the past 5 years. She never reported them because she didn't want to cause panic. The military coordination? Captain Taiho had created an informal network between all the peacekeeping forces. It wasn't in any official documents. It was just relationships he had built over years of working together. Yoonji was quiet for a moment. And the trade systems? Jiwan had memorized the needs and habits of over 300 species. She could predict trade problems weeks before they happened and fix them before anyone noticed. They sat in silence, watching the reports stream in. The Galactic Council was falling apart, and they were the only ones who knew why. "Are we going to help them?" Yoonji asked. Do-hyun looked out the window at Earth's blue sky. "They called us helpers," he said. "They said our work was simple. They said any species could do what we did. And now? Now they're learning the difference between simple and easy." 6 months had passed since the humans left, and the Galactic Council was dying. Chancellor Veltar stood in his office, looking out at the space where the great elevator used to connect the station to the planet below. Now there was only twisted metal and broken dreams. His silver eyes, once bright with pride, were dull with exhaustion. Behind him, his assistant Mordak was reading the daily reports. Each one was worse than the last. "The Zephyrian Third Fleet has declared independence," Mordak said quietly. "They say the Council cannot protect them anymore." "That makes 7 fleets," Veltar said without turning around. "Yes, sir. And the Crystal Collective is threatening to leave the Council completely. They say we have broken our promises to maintain trade routes." Veltar had already lost his job once. The Zephyrian government had removed him when their core worlds lost power, and their industries shut down. But the new chancellor had lasted only 3 weeks before the problems got too big for him too. Now Veltar was back, not because he was the best choice, but because no one else wanted the job. In the medical center, the crisis was getting worse every hour. Dr. Nalarim had been replaced by Dr. Sektos after the plague spread to 17 more worlds. But Dr. Sektos was not doing any better. The disease had changed again. It was now immune to all the old medicines, and the new treatments that Dr. Yuna had developed were not working either, because no one understood how to use them properly. "We need to contact the human doctor," Dr. Sektos told his team. "This is beyond our abilities." His assistant, a young crystalline medic named Lysara, looked up from her work. "The Council banned contact with humans 3 months ago. They said it would make us look weak." "We are weak," Dr. Sektos said. "And if we don't get help soon, we're going to be dead." The plague was not just killing individuals. It was killing entire species' ability to work together. Sick beings were afraid to help others. Healthy beings were afraid to go near the sick. Trade stopped. Communication stopped. Fear was spreading even faster than the disease itself. In the military command center, Admiral Rixoth was fighting a war she could not win. The Outer Ring Rebellion had grown into something huge. Pirates controlled half the trade routes. 3 species had declared war on the Council, and her own forces could barely work together. War leader Hessevan's command ship had been destroyed 2 weeks ago. He was alive, but his fleet was scattered. Admiral Rixoth was trying to coordinate 17 different military groups that all used different tactics, different weapons, and different languages. "Where is the second battle group?" she asked her officer. We think they are attacking the wrong target, Admiral." "What do you mean, wrong target?" "The translation computers told them to attack the rebel base on Kepler 7. But there is no rebel base on Kepler 7. There is a Council supply depot. Admiral Rixoth felt sick. Are they attacking our own forces? Yes, Admiral. And the supply depot thinks the second battle group has joined the rebellion, so they are calling for help to defend against them. This was the kind of mistake that Captain Taiho had prevented every day. He had known every ship captain, every base commander, every small group in the Council forces. When problems started, he could call them directly and fix things before they got out of hand. But Admiral Rixoth only knew how to give orders. She did not know how to build relationships. And without relationships, her orders were just words that got lost in translation. On the planet Zephyria Prime, millions of beings were learning what it meant to live without human help. The atmospheric processors that cleaned their air had started to fail. The food production systems were making the wrong kinds of food, and the power grid was unstable. Chief Engineer Cordis was standing in the control room of the main power plant. In front of him were displays showing power flow across the entire planet. Half the lights were red, meaning systems were failing. How did the humans make this work? He asked his team. We're still trying to figure that out, said his assistant. Their notes are written in a way that doesn't match our textbooks. The truth was that humans thought about engineering differently than other species. Zephyrians built things to last forever. Crystalline beings built things to be beautiful. Ethereals built things to be mysterious, but humans built things to be flexible. They expected systems to break, so they built in ways to fix them quickly. They expected needs to change, so they made systems that could adapt. Other species saw this as messy and unorganized, but it was actually very sophisticated. Now the human-designed systems were trying to adapt to problems, but there were no humans to guide them. The systems were making changes that seemed random to other engineers, and every change was making things worse. Thesara, the crystal being who had worked with Dr. Yuna, was now in charge of the medical supply system. She was discovering that Dr. Yuna had not just been treating sick beings. She had been predicting which medicines would be needed where and when. Look at this, Thesara said to her staff, showing them a file from Dr. Yuna's computer. 6 months ago, she ordered extra medicine for a disease that hadn't even appeared yet. How did she know? She was tracking patterns, weather changes on 17 worlds, migration routes of animals that carry diseases, trade flows that could spread sickness. She was seeing problems before they happened. Without Dr. Yuna's predictions, the medical supply system was always one step behind. When disease broke out, there was never enough medicine in the right place. When treatments were needed, the supplies were on the wrong side of the galaxy. In the Council's main computer center, technicians were finding more surprises. The humans had not just used the computer systems. They had improved them in thousands of small ways. Every program has been modified, reported the chief technician, a young ethereal named Nexthon. The humans added code that made everything run smoother. But it's so complex that we can't understand how it works. The computer systems were like a garden that had been carefully tended for years. The humans had planted improvements everywhere, but they had done it so carefully that no one noticed. Now the garden was becoming a jungle, and no one knew how to trim it back. Lord Kethamos of the Ethereal Dominion was having his own crisis. His people were known for their intelligence and their ability to see hidden patterns, but they were discovering that humans had been even better at finding patterns than they were. Bring me the reports on human activities, he told his advisors. For hours, he read through files that documented what humans had been doing during their time with the Council. The more he read, the more worried he became. Humans had been preventing wars by solving problems before they turned into conflicts. They had been stopping diseases by treating them in the early stages. They had been maintaining trade by predicting what different species would need. Most importantly, they had been building bridges between species that didn't understand each other. Every day, humans had translated not just words but ideas and feelings and ways of thinking. They were not just helpers, Lord Kethmos said to his chief advisor. They were the glue that held us together. What do you mean, my lord? Without them, we are not a council. We are just a group of species that happen to be in the same place. That night, Lord Kethamos did something that no ethereal leader had ever done before. He sent a message to Earth, not an official communication, not a demand or a request, just a simple message from one being to another. We were wrong, the message said. We need your help, please. On Earth, Kyung-ho was reading similar messages from all over the galaxy. Some were formal requests from governments, some were desperate pleas from individuals, some were just admissions of failure. But Kyung-ho remembered the last council meeting. He remembered the way beings had talked about humans as if they were pets that had learned to do tricks. He remembered the laws that made humans second-class citizens in the galaxy they had helped to build. "What do you think?" asked Soman, who was now serving as Earth's ambassador to nowhere. "I think," said Kyung-ho slowly, "that they are learning the difference between being in charge and being a leader." Outside Earth's atmosphere, human ships waited and watched. They were ready to help if asked properly, but they were no longer willing to be taken for granted. The galaxy was burning and only the helpers knew how to put out the fire. 1 year after the humans left, the great ships of the Galactic Council arrived at Earth. But they did not come as conquerors or as leaders. They came as beggars. The ships were damaged and dirty. Their hulls showed scars from battles they had lost. Their crews were tired and scared. The proud fleets that had once controlled the galaxy were now running away from the chaos they could not stop. Chancellor Veltar's ship was the first to dock at Earth's orbital station. He walked down the ramp slowly, his blue skin pale and his silver eyes dim. Behind him came Lord Kethmos, his shadow-like form flickering with exhaustion. Admiral Rixoth followed, her crystal body cracked in several places. They were met by Ji-sung, Earth's new chief negotiator. He was a calm man with gray hair and patient eyes. He wore a simple blue suit and carried no weapons. But the alien leaders looked at him like he was the most powerful being in the galaxy. "Welcome to Earth," Ji-sung said politely. "Please follow me." They walked through the station's clean, bright corridors. Everything worked perfectly. The lights were steady. The air was fresh. The gravity was exactly right. After a year of living with broken systems, the alien visitors found this simple perfection almost magical. In the meeting room, more representatives waited. Dr. Yuna sat at one end of the table, healthy and rested. Captain Taiho was there too, looking calm and confident. Engineer Hana checked her tablet occasionally, but she seemed relaxed. "Please sit," Ji-sung said. The alien leaders sat down carefully. They looked around the room, taking in every detail. This was the first time in a year that they had been in a place where everything worked the way it was supposed to work. Chancellor Veltar spoke first. His voice was quiet and humble. We need your help." "I know," Ji-sung said. "We've been watching. The council is falling apart. Worlds are leaving every day. Wars are spreading. Disease is killing millions. Our technology is failing." Veltar's voice got even quieter. "We don't know how to fix it." Lord Kethmos leaned forward. "We were wrong about humans. We thought you were simple beings who did simple work. We thought anyone could do what you did. But they couldn't," Admiral Rixoth added. "No one could. Everything you touched worked better. Everything you left behind fell apart." Dr. Yuna spoke for the first time. "How many died from the plague?" Admiral Rixoth looked down. 17 million so far. It's still spreading. "Could have been stopped with the right treatment in the first week," Dr. Yuna said sadly. "I left all the information in my files." We couldn't understand your files," admitted a new voice. Dr. Sektos had come on the ships too. He looked sick and tired. "We know the medicine. We know the science. But we don't know the wisdom." Hana looked up from her tablet. "How's the space elevator?" "Still broken," said Kortvan, who had also made the trip to Earth. "We've tried everything. We've brought in the best engineers from 12 worlds. No one can fix it." "That's because it's not really broken," Hana said. "It's just confused. The quantum field stabilizers need to be reset in a specific order. Takes about 10 minutes if you know what you're doing." The alien engineers stared at her. They had spent months trying to fix the elevator. Teams of brilliant minds had worked day and night. And Hana was saying it was a 10-minute job. Captain Taiho smiled, but not in a mean way. "How many ships did you lose in the border wars?" 43, Admiral Rixoth said. "And the rebellion is still growing." "Would have ended in 3 days with the right approach," Taiho said. "Most of those rebels aren't really rebels. They're just scared people who think the council abandoned them." "We tried to negotiate," War Leader Hesevan said. He had arrived on a later ship looking defeated. But every conversation turned into an argument. "Translation problems," said Somin, who had been Earth's diplomatic specialist. "The computer programs can translate words, but they can't translate feelings. When you told the rebels, "We come in peace," the computers made it sound like, "We come to conquer you." Small difference in words, big difference in meaning. Jisung let the silence stretch for a long moment. The alien leaders sat quietly, understanding finally hitting them. Every problem they were facing had a solution. Every disaster could have been prevented. But the knowledge they needed was sitting across the table from them, in the minds of the beings they had called helpers. "What do you want from us?" Lord Kethmos asked finally. "Equality," Jisung said simply. "Not special treatment. Not revenge. Just the same voice in decisions that affect us all." "Done," Chancellor Veltar said quickly. "Whatever you want. Equal votes, equal representation, equal—" Jisung held up his hand. "This isn't a negotiation where you give us things because you're desperate. This is a conversation about building something better than what we had before." He activated a wall display that showed Earth. But it wasn't the Earth the aliens remembered. New ships moved in orbit. Advanced technology gleamed on the surface. The space around Earth buzzed with activity. "We didn't just go home and wait," Jisung explained. "We kept working. We kept building. We kept improving." Soyeon, Earth's research chief, stood up. She was a young woman with bright eyes and quick hands. "We solved the quantum field stabilization problem, also the disease prediction algorithm, and the universal translation matrix, and about 300 other things." She activated another display. This one showed star charts with new trade routes marked in green. "We've already started fixing some of your problems. Disease outbreaks stopped on 7 worlds. Pirates cleared from the merchant lane. 2 wars ended with better communication protocols." "You were helping us?" Admiral Rixoth asked, surprised. "People were dying," Dr. Yuna said. "We couldn't stop that just because your governments were being stupid." Dong-Yun, Earth's new fleet commander, stepped forward. He was a big man with steady eyes. "We also built new defenses. Better ships. Stronger technology. We're not the same humans who left a year ago." The alien leaders looked around the table and began to understand something new. They had come here expecting to ask for help from the same humans they had dismissed. But these humans were different now, stronger, more advanced, more confident. "What are your terms?" Lord Kethmos asked. "Partnership," Jisung said. "Real partnership. Shared decisions, shared responsibilities, shared benefits, and if we refuse?" Chancellor Veltar asked quietly. Jisung smiled, but it was not a threatening smile. "Then you go back to your broken elevator and your spreading plague and your losing wars. And you try to fix them yourselves. And us? We'll be here, building our own future, helping anyone who wants to be a real partner. But we won't be helpers anymore. Those days are over." The alien leaders looked at each other. They thought about their dying worlds, their broken technology, their spreading chaos. They thought about the pride that had brought them to this point. Chancellor Veltar stood up slowly. "I speak for the Zephyrian Empire. We accept your terms." Lord Kethmos rose next. "The Ethereal Dominion agrees." Admiral Rixoth was last. "The Crystal Collective will honor this agreement." Jisung nodded. "Then let's begin." Over the next month, human ships returned to Council space. But they came as equals, not as servants. Dr. Yuna worked with alien doctors to stop the plague, but as a partner in the research, not as a subordinate following orders. Hana fixed the space elevator, but she also trained alien engineers as equals who could understand her methods. Captain Tai-Ho ended the border wars not by taking orders from alien admirals, but by working with them to find solutions they could all support. Most importantly, the new council that emerged was different from the old one. Decisions were made by all species together. Problems were solved by teams that included everyone's knowledge. No one was called a helper anymore. Minho returned to the council chambers, but this time he sat at the front of the room, not the back. When he spoke, others listened. When he made suggestions, they were taken seriously. The galaxy learned something important that year. Real strength doesn't come from being in charge of others. It comes from working together as equals. The humans had not left because they were weak. They had left because they were strong enough to walk away from those who didn't value them. And when they returned, it was not as the humble helpers they had been before. It was as the partners they had always deserved to be. The council was stronger now, not because anyone was in control, but because everyone was working together. The humans had taught them all a lesson that would not be forgotten. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be taken for granted. In the end, Humanity didn't conquer the galaxy through force or threats. They conquered it through competence, patience, and the simple willingness to walk away from those who didn't appreciate what they offered. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.